good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 163 of Buds and Blue Jays, your place for all things related to the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm Jesse Burrell, joined as always by Riley McConnell. And Riley, we are just 3 weeks away from opening day, and I couldn't be more excited. We are in full season preview mode over here at Buds and Blue Jays, and we've got a good one on tap today. Today, we're going through our X factors of the 2024 Toronto Blue Jays season, the players that are really going to define whether or not we're successful or whether we're out of the playoffs and searching for answers going into next season, and a lot of topics. Plus, we're going to go over some more notes from spring training, maybe some extension talks. Garrett Cole is a big baby. We will get into all of that and so much more on this episode. But before we dive in deep to that, Riley, what's up, my guy? How are you today?
Jesse, I am good. Beautiful weather we're having, man. Spring is here. Winter has officially been eliminated from whatever you want to call it. It's springtime, dude, and baseball season is very well in full swing, even though it's only spring training. Nuts like you and I love spring training for a ton of reasons. I know it's not the regular season yet, but dude, it's great. Like we were just talking about, there's a spring training game in 10 minutes, our time against the Detroit Tigers. And I'm sure when we get off here, we're gonna go and cruise that. Actually, you'll have it on behind you. I gotta leave these four walls and venture into another room. But Jesse, things are great, man. Baseball is in full swing for us. The regular season isn't officially upon us yet, but it's a good time to be a baseball fan. It's a good time to be a Blue Jays fan.
All right, with that being said, guys, if you are new here, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. Riley and I come at you with new episodes at the end of every series. We like to go over our winners, our losers, kind of break down some injuries, and follow along with the Toronto Blue Jays all season long. So make sure you stick with us, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. But Riley, without further ado, let's just get right into it. Who are your biggest X factors for the 2024 Toronto Blue Jays season this year?
Well, I'm going to start with the guy who I think, Jesse, could be the biggest X factor for the team, and that's because I believe that this guy well underperformed last year, and I think has a much higher ceiling. I'm talking about Dalton Varsho. This guy will be our opening day left fielder and get more than a couple innings in center field. There's a lot of things to like about Dalton Varsho, but there's also a lot of, incomplete parts in his game. And there's going to be a low batting average with that. And the on-base percentage really didn't look that high last year. And of course, guy should have won a Gold Glove last year, Jesse. Who are we kidding? Varsho, one of the best defensive outfielders in the game. And of course, there's that sneaky cool element that he was brought up as a catcher. Now, the Blue Jays have two very good, MLB ready and have been playing in the MLB catchers, and that other guy in spring training Servin has looked good, so it's not like Varsho's going to get catcher time, but we need him as an outfielder, and he was brought here for his defense, but I believe he was also brought here for his power. Now, Jesse, the problem with that, for being brought here from being a power guy, when it looked like he could have been in Arizona, he only had 20 home runs last year for us. And that's, that's not
a little disappointing his first year here.
Little disappointing. And then you go on to the other side of the ball, Jesse. It's like, well, he didn't have for power. So how did he do in the other department? Oh, a 220 average and a 285 on base percentage. And an on base percentage below 300 for a guy that it probably should have a little more plate discipline. What kept him in the wins above replacement department, I mean, he was a 3.7 WAR, Jesse, with those numbers. The defense obviously means something. I mean, that's why I think he got basically finessed out of the Gold Glove, because you can't collect 4 WAR and have a 220 average and hit 20 home runs without having some damn good defense behind you. Varsho's an extreme X factor because I feel like he's a guy who could possibly hit. I believe he had 27 home runs in his first full season in the big leagues with the Diamondbacks. 27. And I said this last year, I think, said when you hit 27 in your Dalton Varsho at that age, I believe you can hit 30 home runs. One thing I would love to see Varsho do before he does hit 30 home runs, or if he hits 30 home runs, because if he bumps that batting average up, like I'm talking from 220, I want to see a 270 hitter Varsho. And I believe that he is trying to take those steps to become a
Yep. Yep.
270s hitter. And in the spring so far, the numbers really aren't there to support it. I think he's got 5 hits. One has gone for a double that he pulled off a lefty. It was a breaking ball, something like that. But he's working on a shorter approach to the ball, and this is what they say, on 2 strikes, shorten up. Well, sometimes, Jesse, a guy who's 5'9" shouldn't have a big winding power swing. You're gonna naturally hit home runs on your pitch, regardless of the big loop in it or the way how you get extended. You're gonna get a hold of a ball and you're gonna drive it into the seats. If a guy's
Right.
throwing hard enough and your bat comes around and you barrel it up. And I think
Right.
Dalton Varsho has a better chance at being an impactful player if he can raise that average 40 or 50 points. That is a tall task to do, by the way. You don't just increase a batting average by 50 points overnight. That takes some extreme work. I think he can do one of these things, which is either
Okay.
hit 30 home runs or increase his average at least to the 260
Yeah.
mark.
I mean, both are going to be improvement over what he did last year, right? Like his first year in the American League, changing divisions, changing lineups, getting your first look at a lot of pitchers, I think did play a little bit of a part to Dalton Varsho's poor performance last year. The thing I look at the most, the big thing that happened with Dalton Varsho is he just got under the ball far too much. He wasn't really barreling it up. He had a ton of pop-ups. I think him and Danny Jansen led the Blue Jays in pop-ups last year, and those in the big leagues are automatic outs. But I will say there is a sign of optimism. He has changed his swing. He has changed his mindset. The reason he hit 27 home runs back in Arizona was he was really hitting the ball in the air with authority to the pull side. He's already made some comments about wanting to do that this year. And the big thing for Varsho, too, I looked this up, Riley. The spring training numbers just seem kind of meh for Dalton Varsho, but he's seen 54 pitches, I believe. He's only swung and missed at 3 of them, which would be a 5.4% swinging strike rate for Dalton Varsho, which spring training doesn't mean much at all. It's a very small sample size. I get it. But if that is an improvement that Dalton Varsho made in his game, we could really see big numbers coming from Dalton Varsho. I'd expect the average to rise. I'd expect the power numbers to come up. And I think, yeah, it's going to be all systems go. And I think we're going to look back, and last season is going to be the worst season, offensive season, Dalton Varsho has in his career.
I would love to see that, Jesse. And the fact that you take away what you will from spring training, Jesse. For me, the swing and miss rate being cut by, I assume, a real large amount. I'm gonna guess that he's gonna carry over some of that to the regular season, and it will work itself out. Baseball has a way of we call it the laws of averages here on Buds and Blue Jays. I don't know what you actually call it. Baseball does find a way to, a guy who's hitting 400 over the course of a month. That's not going to happen.
Of course. Look at Matt Chapman last year.
The baseball gods simply won't allow it, and you will suffer at some point in the season to bring you back to earth. You might finish the year a 220 hitter, but you're not Ted Williams and you're not Joey Votto for half a season in whatever year it was that he was batting 300, or John Olerud for that matter. You're not allowed. The baseball gods simply forbid guys hitting 400. But one thing I believe the baseball gods will allow, Jesse, is Dalton Varsho have success this year. Not only in the field where we know he's going to have success. I don't even want to talk about Varsho's defense. For me, that is not the X factor in this. It is strictly,
it's going to be consistent, right?
It's strictly his hitting. And the more times he gets bat on ball, and another thing I like about Varsho's game too is his ability to bunt for a base hit. I love that out of the left-handed batter's box, Jesse. I know you just did that with your head. You are a go big or go home guy.
That's right. Swing for the fences.
You are an American League East manager. I myself would have a better record in the old school National League because I appreciate the small ball in the games, like Dalton Varsho can do. Whether John Schneider decides to go that route in this day and age of guys, having power and basically, the small ball kind of going to the wayside. I think Dalton Varsho, regardless, whether it's small ball, whether it could be a guy who puts up good, not great numbers in the 2024 year. I'm not expecting a 35 home run season. I think a 250 along with 30 home runs would be great. I also think 25 home runs along with a 265, 270 batting average would be great. That's
be an improvement over last year. Absolutely.
I'm knock on wood. You can only go up from 220 average, a sub 300 on base percentage, and 20 home runs. We know the team didn't hit home runs. Dalton Varsho certainly did not hit home runs
Yeah.
last year.
All right, we got to move on to. We got a lot of players to talk about. Dalton Varsho is one of the bigger X factors for this year, but I've got one that is probably even bigger. And if you've been a Toronto Blue Jays fan for the past, half a decade or so, which of course you're here, of course you have been, then we know we need a monstrous season from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And Riley, I'm just going to go out. I'm going to read you his WRC plus over the last 5 seasons since he came into the league. 2019, 106. 2020, the COVID shortened year, 110. Then he had the MVP season where he had 166. 2022 was 133. And then last season, 118. One of those numbers looks a lot different than the others. But I have reason for hope with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. First thing, no one in baseball very few people in baseball can consistently hit the ball as hard as Vladimir Guerrero Jr. can. That is a skill you cannot teach. That is a skill a player is born with. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. still has that in his bag, so we know that's in there somewhere. He spent the offseason getting into better shape. If you followed Vladdy on Instagram or if you followed us on our social medias, we posted out a lot of content with that too. You can really see an improvement of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And he admittedly last season, he worked hard, yes, but he admittedly didn't come into the best shape of his life, I suppose. And if you look at the under the hood stats from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. last year, his WOBA and his expected WOBA and his expected slugging and his actual slugging were the largest gap out of anyone in baseball, which makes me think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. simply just got unlucky last year. And the big thing, Riley, if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to reach his pinnacle and become the true MVP talent, he really needs to stop swinging at that pitch down and away out of the zone or even on that corner out of the zone because Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is gifted. He can probably take that pitch and hit it into a single or something. There's no doubt in my mind. But when Vladdy has the power that Vladdy has, you really want to see him swing at the pitch you know he can do some damage with. And those are the pitches over the middle of the plate, the heart of the plate. Those are the pitches I want to see Vladimir Guerrero Jr. destroy this season. And for what it's worth, the one home run he does have this spring was a fastball down to the zone that he hit all the way back to Toronto from home run there. So if we get that from Vladimir Guerrero Jr., then I expect great things from this and maybe an MVP season, which would ultimately raise the ceiling of the whole Toronto Blue Jays team.
Yeah, we've seen such difference in his splits year to year since he's become a major leaguer, and we know what he is at his best, and we know what an average first baseman looks like. And when you talk about a first baseman as a hitter, you don't want an average hitter at first base. That is not what that position is designed for. This is a position of power. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. did not exemplify a power hitter. Sure, this is a guy who doesn't strike out a lot. He'll take his walks. The hard hit balls are legit. The launch angle was way out of whack last year. The double plays, the ground outs, it's enough to drive you nuts. And I know that it drove him nuts too. This is a great year for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to take back the year he had as MVP runner-up. Shohei's in, if you want to talk about and compare, Shohei's in the National League now. If we do a do-over at that year, he wins the MVP. So
so we know what's in there. We know he can do it.
We know he can do it. I just think it's a tall task. I don't want to look at Baseball Reference 15 years from now, if that even exists, or we're even still around in 15 years, and go, wow, he had 48 home runs and his next highest total was 38. I don't want to look at that. I don't want to see a guy who barely drives in 100 runs in the 3 spot on this team. I want to see a guy who is at the All-Star game every summer. Not that that means anything, but if he's there, that means he's at peak performance and has been slugging at the first half of the year. And if we're in the playoffs, that means he's been slugging the second half of the year. And that's what I want to see, is him have a complete season, and like he did in his MVP runner-up here, because I think I'm going to compare it to that until I see it, because I'm not fully immersed and not in full belief that he can do that right now. He's got to get out of the gate really fast. I mean, that's going
Yeah,
to be
a hot start will be key for
a
Vlad.
hot start will be key. A slow start, and you're going to see a lot of people jump off the Blue Jays bandwagon right away.
Yeah, he needs to go back to attacking the fastball. In that MVP 2021 season, he slugged 824 on that pitch. Last year it was just 531. A monstrous difference. If he is coming around on that fastball, he's going to be good. Projections for what it's worth: 36 home runs, 144 WRC plus. The projection systems still love Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and they have for a long time. Buckle in, boys. Big season from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. coming, almost guaranteed here. The next player we want to talk about here, Riley, go ahead. You wanted to talk about your next X Factor. Go ahead.
So we're obviously on different pages here with our X factors. I mean, sure, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is a guy who's going to take home an MVP if he's at his best. I Varsho probably not. However, I think that if there is a guy who is not Kevin Gausman and has a chance to receive MVP votes if he is at his best, I believe that pitcher is Jose Barrios. And if you're a casual baseball viewer or a Jays fan specifically, you've seen a very up and down, and I can't even say up and down. You've seen a down then up version of Jose Barrios. Uh, when he was with the Minnesota Twins organization, I really liked what Jose Barrios did. I thought it was a slam dunk when we got him. And in the second half, when he was pitching for us, in 2019 or 2021, my bad, 2021, when we got Jose Barrios,
Yeah.
I thought it was a slam dunk. He pitched fantastically for us in the what is it, 12 starts that he had. I believe he had an ERA of 3. There's a lot going on with Jose Barrios this spring. Jesse, you're a pitch guy. You know what, let's get into let's just get into it right now. Let's talk about this, Jesse. He's developed. We know that his sweeper looked really good, and now he's got a cutter to go along with it. I think that is.
I am very excited about Jose Barrios' cutter.
Great comp. I can't wait till they show us kind of the layover of both pitches. I think that is a great pitch for him to incorporate. There was a Jose Barrios in Minnesota that did strike out 200 guys twice. I don't know if you'll get that as a Blue Jays Jose Barrios, but we sure as heck, man, can get a lot of soft contact out of Jose Barrios. And I think that is absolutely great with the defense that we have behind him. I think there was a time where we looked at our defense and said that is a great defense to play behind Hyun-Jin Ryu. And now we can look at the defense and go, that is a great defense to play behind a guy like Jose Barrios or even a Chris Bassett. I like what I've seen out of Barrios so far. And we'll talk about the cutter, Jesse, first of all, before I get into my next thing.
Yeah, I want to go on why I am excited about the cutter from Jose Barrios is because when you look at his individual pitch repertoire, the big sweeping slider, the sinking two-seam fastball with run, it was really, he has the changeup too, but it was really just the two pitches that really went hand in hand. His repertoire looks very similar to like 2018 Corey Kluber. And Corey Kluber was very good, but he needed to take an extra step. It wasn't until he added a cutter where Corey Kluber turned into the Cy Young contender that we knew he could be. I'm not saying that Jose Barrios could turn into a Cy Young contender here, but what it does, it gives him a weapon to attack left-handed hitters, which were the main reason he gave up a lot of his home runs the last few seasons. And it gives him another change of space, right? You got the 95 from the fastball and you get like the low 80s from the slurve. Now that gives you something in like the 91 to 89 range where Jose Barrios can be even that much more effective again. I really do like this mix. And if he can master it, it's had good results this spring, so take that for what it's worth. But if he can master that cutter, we could even see Jose Barrios take another leap forward this season. And that's why I think he's a very good call for an X factor here, because if he steps up and takes another leap forward, then this Blue Jays team is going to take another step forward. And I think it can only be good things.
If he takes that step forward, which I believe whether he takes a full step forward or not, I think there is going to be improvements. And I think we're going to see a very refined Jose Barrios in 2024. I won't spoil it for my bold takes episode, but kind of a like lukewarm spoiler. Like I believe Jose Brios is going to walk in this season and have a fantastic year, is what I believe. I don't know if the numbers, the projections, totally back that up, but he's still, and again, he's going into his age 30 season. And I think now is a very important time for him. This is kind of what he's going to be like in basically from age. How is he going to be from age 30 to age 34? Because we know he's
Yeah.
on our
And he's got a
he's
lot
on,
of innings under his belt too, which is
he
important
does.
because, eventually that'll catch up to you, right?
Yeah, and the fact that his contract is backloaded, I think there's a year where he's making a lot of money, and whether he's going to be worth that money at this time. So we need to get his worth in kind of the middle of that contract. Right around now would be nice. I think he's going to have a great year. I think that you look at 2022. You want to talk about outliers on baseball cards on reference pages. I think 2022 is that outlier. I think we are going to get similar numbers to last year, Jesse. But
That's a
there
safe
is
bet. Yeah.
there is a very good chance, though, as well, Jesse. Even if the ERA is a little bit up, I think there's a really good chance for some of those numbers to calm down. The home runs, the walks and hits per nine. There's like baseball, you can never predict numbers right to a T. I did predict Jose Barrios to his ERA to a T. I said 389 a few weeks later. I still have it written down because I'm going off that. I think he's going to have a very effective year. He's certainly an X factor for us. He is the next guy behind Kevin Gausman for our pitching staff. I think Gosman's fantastic. You look at how he's done as a Toronto Blue Jay, and it's a different road for Jose Barrios. He struggled in his first full season, and last year was a phenomenal arm for us, and I think he's going to repeat around the same as last year.
Sorry, having mic issues over on my end, but here we go. Yeah, I agree. Nothing but good things from Jose Barrios. We'll dive into that a little bit later. My next player I really want to talk about, and this one is kind of more on a sour note, but an X factor nonetheless for this Toronto Blue Jays team, and that is the performance of Alek Manoah. I was really hoping by this point in the spring we would have a good idea of whether or not we're getting good Alek Manoah or whether or not we're getting the bad Alek Manoah. And the fact he's only made one start, faced 11 batters, only got 5 of them out, hit 3 of them, and gave up 3 hard hit balls really doesn't tell us a lot from Alek Manoah, but we know the story. 2022, 224 ERA, a whip under 1, over 196 innings pitched. And then last year, the 5.87 ERA, the 1.74 whip over just 87 innings pitched. Look, we talked about Manoah quite a bit. The velocity's back up. The spin rate on the slider is back up. But if he doesn't know where the pitch is going, that's not a good idea, Riley. I want to gauge your interest here and like on a scale of 1 to 10, or maybe give me a percentage out of 100. What are the chances that Alek Manoah can get back to his Cy Young form? And then what are the chances he's done? He's cooked. He's never going to get back here again. I want you to give me both of those numbers.
Well, I think for him I think there's a less than 10% chance that he gets back to that form. I really do. I might even put it at less than 5% chance, Jesse,
Yeah.
that he
But it's
gets
not
back
zero,
to the.
but
It's
yeah,
not
it's low.
nothing is zero in baseball, Jesse.
Of
Nothing is
course.
ever truly zero. Zero is just a placeholder. Baseball players are not placeholders; they are human beings. Sadly, whether or not Manoah is a good human, we're not even going to touch that one on the show. You can watch our episodes last year in November. That I was, quite to one side on what I thought with Alek Manoah. I think that any team would give him a chance. I think the Blue Jays have given him enough chances. And I think that I wouldn't call him cooked, but I think now's a real time to do a role assessment. You can't have him out there and not have command over his pitches. That for me, you have control, you have velocity, and you have movement. Start with control and then work on the craft, whether you want to be a Randy Johnson or Pedro Martinez, work on that after. Be a Greg Maddux first. Locate your pitches. You always got to know where they're going. He didn't even do that. It's not like he throws 98, 99 either. Listen, he had this offseason where he basically got himself back into baseball shape. It got us excited. And here I was thinking the whole time, I'm in the back of my mind. I still got to see you on the bump. I still got to see you pitch. And Jesse, we both we watched the same game, right? Like
No,
he
it
was
wasn't
not.
televised, but we saw how it went. Yeah.
Sure, whatever. Like we can't assume that he is anywhere close to being back to the Cy Young form that he was. We need to basically keep him at that square one and see these improvements. Like we can't have him pitch in a major league game to start a major league game at this point. Like we just simply cannot,
Yeah.
Jesse.
So we will see. He'll be a storyline to follow all offseason, or who knows? Maybe he just begins the season on the IL because he is dealing with some shoulder fatigue right now, and maybe we just don't see Alek Manoah this season. Either way, a big high variance player could go one way or the other. It'll be interesting to follow as the course of the season. Your last guy, one of your other X factors, Riley, and I know it's a fan favorite of both of ours here on the show. Bring it to me. What do you got?
Well, Jesse Burrell, this is my favorite Blue Jays player right now. This is a guy who does not get enough credit. One of the most underrated players in baseball. Danny Jansen
Mm-hmm.
is such an X factor for this Toronto team. He is so it's almost makes me sick how undervalued he is. Alejandro Kirk is a good big league catcher, I suppose. Depends who you ask. I don't know if I feel that way or not, but I tell you what I do feel. I feel like Danny Jansen is an everyday player. Like regardless if it's a lefty, regardless if it's a righty. Um, and and I feel like this is a guy in the spring who has actually showed up so far. One of the few guys that can pull a fastball down the line with authority, with power. His defense is probably not as good as Alejandro Kirk's, but it's still above average among major league catchers. Danny Jansen had, I mean, what did he have last year? He accumulated 1.5 WAR, 268 at bats, and then got hurt. And I mean, the injuries have bugged this poor guy. I mean, this is a guy who's played his max amount in 2019 and played 100. He played 107 games in 2019, and he topped his career numbers last year and didn't play that. He's very much on his way up. I want to see us actually use this guy before we
Mm-hmm.
basically
Yeah.
lose him to free agency, and then he goes off and hits 28 home runs a season for the Milwaukee Brewers or something, because I feel like that's going to happen. Like I think that he is one of the toolsiest catchers in all of Major League Baseball, and that we undervalue him as an organization. I think the league undervalues him a little bit, but that's neither here nor there. There's a ton of things to like about Danny Jansen. I get that there's, you know, a lot of swing and miss in his game. He's I'll say right off the bat, first and foremost, he's a catcher. One thing I care about catcher is defense. His defense is just good enough. Okay. Then we'll talk about hitting. One of the best power hitters in the catcher spot in all of baseball.
Mm-hmm.
He
And if he
has
can stay healthy for a full season, like that number could soar, right?
there is a universe where Danny Jansen has put up 3 home runs of maybe 2 seasons of 30 home run campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
In an alternate universe where Kirk doesn't exist, where he's given his at bats.
It's a contract year for Danny Jansen too, and there is some data that does show that players tend to be on the field more and stay healthy in their contract year. So that's a good sign for the Blue Jays. That's a good sign for Danny Jansen. Look, the Blue Jays desperately need power, and depending on how much power you think Danny Jansen has, he's probably the second or third best power hitter on this Toronto Blue Jays team. It's unfortunate with the Justin Turner signing, we won't see as many lineups with both Kirk and Jansen in them. And I think that's unfortunate because it might cut into Danny Jansen's playing time a little bit. But I really do think that we can get Danny Jansen on the field as much as we can, and good things will happen for this Blue Jays team.
Jesse, I couldn't agree more. I'll leave it
Mm-hmm.
short. You know how I feel about Jansen. If you've watched the show for 60 seconds or less, or 60 seconds or more, you know I like Danny Jansen. I just, I will go to bat for this guy because I see the upside. Jesse, you always talk about upside, and I think that Danny Jansen has a tremendous amount of upside. I mean, why do we? I'll leave it at one more thing. Why do we got Justin Turner in the cleanup spot this year when there's a perfectly good Danny Jansen that could hit more than 27 home runs if he's given those ABs?
And we will get to the lineup as we get into the season here. But I got to talk about my last X factor for the Toronto Blue Jays, and that is George Springer. And Riley, I'm getting worried that we are starting to see the start of the decline from George Springer. He will be 34 years old entering the season. He's in year 4 of that 6-year, $150 million deal we signed to him. And last season, his WRC plus dropped to 104, just barely above a league average bat. He went from 4.3 WAR down to 2.2. The strikeout rate rose, the walk rate dropped, the sprint speed dropped. So did all of his hard hit numbers. I think the decline in the bat is real. The positive for George Springer, the move to right field seemed to have worked, as he did play in 154 games last year. So that is good, I suppose. But I dove in deep to George Springer this afternoon, and I really wanted to see, because if we can get that guy back and last year was just a blip, then okay, we're in a good spot. But I'm really worried that there's going to be a decline. He had a stretch last season, and I know we talked about it, where he went 2 for 49 with 15 strikeouts. If you take out that stretch, which you can't do, but if you do hypothetically, his overall season line does look a lot better. But his big thing, and I've said this before, I said it with Justin Turner when we signed him, I'll say it again with George Springer. One of the biggest signs of aging in a baseball player is that you suddenly do lose the ability to catch up to the four-seam fastball. And in 2021, he crushed four-seam fastballs, 18 run value against them. And last year, 2022, is 15, still really good. Dropped all the way to -2 last season for George Springer. And on top of that, he got lit up by sliders too. Only hit 194 and a 265 WOBA against sliders. Pitchers knew that against Springer, started throwing him a lot more sliders and breaking the stuff. I think the book is out, and we need to either see, one, George Springer just take those pitches and work a tough battle, or he needs to figure out a change in his approach to start crushing those pitches, which is a lot to ask for a 34-year-old veteran coming off this thing. I am worried we get a very low down season from George Springer, and he might be hitting towards the back end of our lineup by the time the season's done.
I mean, we're looking. I'm looking at his page right now. When you barely have an OPS plus over 100. When previous years you've been in the 140 OPS plus. You've been in the 120s. Heck, in 2019 when he had 39 home runs, Jesse, as high as 50% better than league average. There was a time where George Springer, one of the most feared players in baseball, and I know this as a guy who did not like the Astros and probably still doesn't love the Astros now. George Springer was damn deadly, man. Absolutely crushed baseballs while playing a premium defensive position and hitting at the top of the lineup. Listen, I don't know what George Springer, for me, is probably not my leadoff hitter this year. The batting average just in the on base just don't reflect those things. Sure, like he had his first 2020 season last year. He had a career high in steals. Yeah, because they changed the rules a little bit, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know.
Sprint speed was down for Springer too, which is
where are we? What is going to happen this year? This is a huge X factor. If there's any chance of getting a George Springer that has, the 125 OPS plus and can take his walks and not have a ton of swing and miss in his game, and basically still revive his role in MLB as the best power hitting leadoff hitter, then we're doing great. But if we get that kind of decrepit guy we saw last year, and he plays only 140 games, not even in the 150s. I mean, the fact that he played 154 games last year, I think moving him to the corner outfield was a great idea. I think that was great. I think that the offensive numbers, you're going to see kind of some up and down in the last part of his career, maybe over the next 2 seasons. Jesse, I don't know if there's a world we live in where he's going to get 175 hits. I don't think there's a world we live in where he's going to hit like an above 120 OPS plus. I just don't see it. I'm sorry.
I don't either.
See it. I like George Springer. I think that when he came to Toronto, he provided us with a great impact role. I think the young guys kind of have to carry this team a little more, because I don't think George Springer's shoulders can handle that load.
And look, and if that's the case, then that is a problem for this Toronto Blue Jays team, because we really need high impact offensive thump. George Springer is supposed to be one of these guys who can provide high impact offensive thump. And if it's not happening, the Blue Jays might be a little bit of trouble. But those were our 3 X factors for each of us that we thought really could be the make or break storyline for the Toronto Blue Jays. We'll be following these, especially early in the season as we get going. I wanted to shout out some honorable mentions because, look, every single player on this team could be an X factor if they have a sudden breakout out of nowhere. Alejandro Kirk is one of them. I thought the swing looks a little different. He seems to be generating more power. He's got a bit of a toe tap this swing, and he's got 2 home runs. Leads the Blue Jays in all of spring training in home runs. So keep that in mind for Alejandro Kirk. Yusei Kikuchi, he's been tinkering with his pitch mix. He's trying to figure out that changeup. If he can figure out the changeup on top of figuring out the breaking pitches he figured out last year, then maybe there's another level for Yusei Kikuchi. So take a look for that. And Jordan Romano, obviously, as our closer. It's tough to see him get any better, but if he, for whatever reason, has a season where he's just not effective and he loses it, then that could be a problem for the Blue Jays. And the last one, Kevin Biggio. If I remind you, he was playing every day by the end of the season last year. He had an over 400 on-base percentage for the month of September. If that's real, and he did just draw a walk in his first at-bat of the spring training here, too, for Kevin Biggio. So if he's a legit guy, a good power on-base guy, maybe we're finally getting the guy who's a good prospect. That could be something there, Riley. Any of those 4 do you think is a bigger X factor, or maybe a player I didn't mention?
I think you got a lot of the players down. I love that. I love anytime Cavan can draw a walk, because it reminds me of his basically 80 grade plate discipline that isn't really 80 grade at all. I love that. Listen, and as far as pitching, I'll leave it short here. I know we're almost 6 minutes behind schedule, Jesse. I know you're on a tight ship here. I really think Kikuchi has it in him again to have a very good year. It'll be hard to top. Yeah. It'll be hard to top last year for him. But I think the 4 main starting pitchers collectively are going to be very good. If you combine 4 starting pitchers on other teams, I think that the Blue Jays are going to be in the top 5 of all of Major League Baseball. I think we have very good pitching staff. And I think Yusei Kikuchi is going to play a big role in that this year, the same as last year.
All right, well, those are X factors for the Toronto Blue Jays season this year. Leave a comment down below if you have one we mentioned, or if you agree or disagree. If you think George Springer is going to bounce right back, if you think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is just going to be a league average hitter, you tell us, you let us know. Leave a comment down below, and we will react to you on there. Riley, I wanted to take this time to talk a little bit about what is going on in spring training, because it's been a week since our last episode, and there's been a lot of stuff going on. Oh, sorry. And I want to start with the injury updates, because this will probably project us more as we are 3 weeks out to opening day, what this Blue Jays team is going to look like. The first one, Kevin Biggio, as mentioned, is back. He just made his spring training debut today, drew that walk. He looks good to go. Alek Manoah, who we talked about earlier in this episode, he's dealing with shoulder soreness. Played catch Monday and felt good. Played catch again Tuesday. Was supposed to throw off a mound today, but did not. He is still considered day-to-day and is probably likely to either begin the season in AAA or on the IL, which would open up a spot for Bowden Francis, who is pitching right now. Speaking of which, Kevin Gausman had shoulder fatigue, played catch on Tuesday, felt good, did it again on Wednesday. The Blue Jays are hopeful he can get back on the mound by Monday, which would make you think about 2.5 weeks to get ramped up. Still in line to make a spot, but maybe not on opening day. Maybe he's your number 3 or 4 starter to go on opening day to give you about 5 innings. Yariel Rodriguez has yet to make an appearance this spring, but he felt good coming out of a side session. He's scheduled to throw live batting practice tomorrow. Ricky Tiedemann threw a simulated game off a mound. He will get the start on Saturday against the Phillies, and he should be able to accumulate a full-on workload by the end of camp. So good news. We'll get to see Ricky Tiedemann again here soon. Yariel Rodriguez felt good coming out of his side session Sunday. He's scheduled to throw live BP again here soon. Shouldn't be long before we see him on the mound again either. And then I wanted to give a thumbs up, not injury related, but a positive bravo from the Buds and Blue Jays podcast is for Eric Swanson and his son Toby, who they seem to avoid some major detriments or some major bad things. And it seems like he's going to be back on the mound soon once his son is released from hospital. In fact, he threw a 20-pitch side session in a simulated game, and everyone thinks that Eric Swanson is going to be good to go for opening day. So out of those injury updates and the Swanson family, Riley, major takeaway out of any of that?
First of all, I love that for Eric Swanson and the rest of the Swanson family. That is so refreshing to hear. First of all, it's nice to have Eric Swanson back with the team, but more so importantly, it's great that his son is in stable enough condition and that it looks like things are going to go well for him. And moving on from that, speaking of, lesser, you can't talk about injuries and then not address that first, because that was by far the biggest injury of the spring. I had to kind of go into that first. Moving on to the actual players on the field, however, It's scary when Ricky Tiedemann is pulled from a start because of discomfort and whatever else, man. I want to see this kid pitch. He's kind of the mythical creature, in a sense where you don't really get to see him a lot. He kind of just comes around every so often. I was ready to watch him pitch. He was feeling some discomfort. Great, pull him from the game. You do not want to risk long-term injury to an arm like Ricky Tiedemann, where he can be a huge impact piece for this ball club. Injuries suck. We're a deep enough organization. If our stars perform like they're supposed to, then we can get by winning six out of 10 games on a consistent basis. Will that be good enough down the stretch and to get into the postseason? That is so yet to be determined. I'm excited to see what Ricky Tiedemann can do. Obviously, I think there's a lot of people with eyes on him. I mean, he's one of the most exciting young players in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, 16.8 Ks per nine last season. 16 Ks per nine from Ricky Tiedemann last season. In fact, Yusei Kikuchi came out of his side session saying, I am jealous of Ricky Tiedemann's stuff. And last time I checked, Yusei Kikuchi had pretty good stuff himself. So if he is still jealous of that, that is saying something. Let's get in a little bit here to just overall gauge of what has been happening in spring training. I have the leaderboards because Fangraphs and Baseball Reference both have spring training stat lines now. Paulo Espino leads the team in strikeouts with 9 strikeouts. Mitch White has thrown the most innings with 6. He also has 6 walks, which is third most out of every pitcher in all of spring training. So the command might not necessarily be there from Mitch White. Bo Bichette and Nathan Lucas both lead the Blue Jays in hits with 7. As mentioned earlier, Alejandro Kirk's 2 home runs lead the team. Santiago Espinal and Justin Turner both have 5 walks, which lead the team. Brian Servin, who hasn't had an RBI in about 2 weeks, still leads the team with 8 because he had a 5 RBI game in there. Davis Schneider, Eduardo Escobar, and Cam Eden have each struck out 8 times and grounded into double plays, Riley, surprising nobody. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Alejandro Kirk both have hit into 2 each this season. Anything catch your interest there in that stats of those leaders and so far this spring, or is that as expected?
We're going to say as expected. I think that there's a couple outliers. Brian Servin will not lead the team in RBIs at any time this year.
Something went wrong if that's the case.
I would put a lot of money that he does not finish anywhere close to our RBI lead. It's Jesse, what is there to take away from that? Same with Espino, in the pitching department. It's time to get eyes on people. The fact that Eduardo Escobar has a lot of strikeouts is a concerning thing.
He's not making this team. Not a chance.
No, yeah. I totally agree with that. And there's a lot of guys on the edge who I think we're going to talk about it next episode, Jesse. Kind of the guys we think are going to make the cut and stuff. So I'll leave it for that time. But again, it's spring training. I love that Bo Bichette is up there in hits. I think that's great.
And he's been hitting him hard, too. He had a hit this spring, which I think would have been his 3rd hardest hit all last season. So that's good news for Bo Bichette and for the Blue Jays.
And on the other, for as far as the other side of the on base goes, I love that Justin Turner is drawing walks. Yes, it's only the spring, but let's see a different approach. I mean, at least if he's in the middle of that batting order and he's getting on base, perhaps this is a time where a guy, like I said, Dalton Varsho, can step up and he'll have a better offensive year and potentially be a guy to drive the middle of the order guys in. Wouldn't that be nice? Because I know we really lacked that last year. We lacked that last year as well.
Yeah. And then I just have some other notes that have caught my attention so far this spring. Bowden Francis had 7 swings and misses in his last start. He's pitching right now and is not going so great, but it looks like he's settled in a little bit right now. He's probably our candidate for starter number 5 to open the season in our rotation if something were to happen with Manoah or if Gosman's not ready. We talked about Barrios' cutter. We talked about Alejandro Kirk's swing. Ernie Clement, Riley, another impressive week from him. He is on this team no matter what. I do not think, unless someone gets hurt or he gets hurt, I do not think there was a world where Ernie Clement is not on this baseball team. He's going to be on there. Chris Bassett struggled in one of his starts. The velocity was still down. But then he retired 7 straight and looked good on the mound. I'm not worried about Chris Bassett whatsoever. And I really like our relieving core. Zach Littell, Brandon Eisert, Zach Pop. Like the guys who are going to be in Buffalo, you can count Yaz Razulueta in this. I think they're going to be quite good. And I think the Blue Jays relief pitcher depth is actually going to be pretty strong this year. So if we have to send a guy on that shuttle bus back and forth, I think the Blue Jays are going to be in good shape. Oh, and Daniel Vogelbach hit a home run off Garrett Cole, and we haven't talked about this because it happened the day after we recorded our last episode. One, Daniel Vogelbach looks good and is probably ahead of Spencer Horowitz to be on this team opening day. And Garrett Cole, still a baby. Just want to put that out there. Not a fan of him. Any other standouts or things that caught your attention this spring, Riley?
I love how Vogelbach looks this spring. I wanted to that's the freshest thing you just said. I think that Vogelbach looks fantastic, and if Justin Turner is a right-handed batter and Vogelbach is a left-handed batter off the bench, I don't know how you're going to prioritize them in the batting order. I realize that Justin Turner can hit righties very well, but it's good to see. I want to have those options off the bench. We have guys who can play defense now. Let's get some guys to hit. Not a ton to take away, man. Probably we're at 45 minutes. We'll probably move on to the next portion here.
Yeah, Kevin Kiermaier just went deep for his first home run of the spring. So
nice. Also good.
That's
also
good
to see, man. Great to see.
All right, some other news and notes, not really spring training related, around the Toronto Blue Jays. The first one is that they will have 2 games in the first half of the season, which are Apple broadcast TV games. I know you and I talked about that a bit last year when they did happen. May the 2nd against the Nationals, or May the 3rd, in Washington against the Nationals will be an Apple TV game. And Friday, May 17th at home against the Rays will also be that. And Riley, Josh Donaldson announces his retirement. One of only 2 MVPs, a key force in the middle of those Blue Jays runs that went back-to-back to the ALCS. Do you have a favorite Josh Donaldson moment or play or anything you want to bring up from his career, his time here in Toronto?
It has to be the play known as the Mad Dash. To complete the sweep. That was
the Donaldson dash. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. That was good heads up baseball on a throwing air ball, got away from the first baseman. We know the thing. Donaldson always played with an edge. Of course, I liked him because he was in the Oakland Athletics organization. Some of my favorite third basemen have played there. He was actually a catcher, though, and they're showing that more now on the MLB postings. Like, did you guys know Josh Donaldson was a catcher? It's like, yeah, I knew. Like, where was I living under a rock in 2012, 2013, man? Get real. Like, for real, though, guys. I think he was great. Like, there are players that we don't get to the postseason with 2015, 2016 without. Josh Donaldson is that guy in 2015. He won the MVP. Our last guy to win the MVP. We've come close. We've had guys win Cy Youngs. It was a great year for Josh Donaldson. What was it? 41 or 42 home runs, a 297 average, and a ton of runs driven in. The real power numbers on that Jays team. We need 3 guys who can do what Edwin Bautista and Donaldson did in that era, because that is an elite bunch of hitters right there. I have a lot of good Josh Donaldson memories. I think that he got pretty stale after he left Toronto. Played for the Twins, the Brewers, the Braves. I'm not even naming them in correct order. Because
Yankees were there too.
The Yankees were definitely there. The Guardians, I think, maybe. I could be wrong. Like, there's a mixed bag. He low key, really good guy to use on Immaculate Grid for my fellow gritties out there. He had a great career as a Toronto Blue Jay. Certainly, I'm not going to bid a case for him to go into the Hall of Fame. But for a very short prime, he chose the correct organization. It was with our Blue Jays, and he really stuck out as one of the best players in the game for about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, Josh Donaldson's peak was definitely Hall of Fame worthy. I was at one of his 3 home run games against the Twins. That was cool. He actually came really close to hitting his 4th home run that game. I think it fell just a few feet short. Several walk-offs. I will remember Donaldson. I remember when Marco Estrada was pitching at the Trop. It was the 8th inning. He dove into the crowd at the Trop to preserve Marco Estrada's no-hitter that day. That was very cool. Several walk-off hits. And Josh Donaldson will always be known for me as the guy who said, "This isn't the try league. This is the get it done league." And that quote has always stuck with me. I've used that in my real life ever since then. So thank you, Josh Donaldson. Enjoy retirement. And thank you for being a part of our Toronto Blue Jays history.
I want to add one more thing. He also, I loved when they did the celebrations and showed the clubhouse and the boys getting pickled with all the Budweiser beer. Shout out.
Yes. Yeah.
Shout out my favorite type of water, Budweiser. where he basically did he recited something out of Dr. Seuss. I believe it went something along of 1 beer, 2 beer, 3 beer, 4 beer, or something like that. You can't you can't write poetry that good, Jesse. The good times. I'm sure he was a party animal. If you're on the right side of him, because I'm sure if he, had maybe one or too many pops, he could maybe be a hothead. I'm not sure. We're gonna leave on a good note with Josh Donaldson.
It's like when David Wells was pitching for the Blue Jays, he said his diet consisted of chips, beer, and American League hitters. Well, Josh Donaldson's was probably beer, hot dogs, and American League pitchers during his MVP time. So good for you, Josh Donaldson. All right. Riley, it is spring training. We are in the first week of March. Historically speaking, around Major League Baseball, this is the time that extensions are handed out for big name players. It was this time last year. The Blue Jays allegedly offered a contract extension to Matt Chapman, which he turned down, which looks not so good in retrospect now, but hey, so be it. And I'm wondering, Riley, a contract year for guys like Danny Jansen, Yusei Kikuchi, and a guy we've got to talk about our core, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette. Are we going to put a long-term extension for any of these guys going to this year? And if so, what do you think it looks like?
I think, because we only have, I think our longest payrolled guys right now would be, I think Bo's got a couple years left, I believe, or 1 year left.
Bo and Vlad have this season and next season.
So it's 2 years left. I mean, I would at least like to see Vlad get extended past what Bo is when his kind of 3-year deal runs out there. Of course, I would love to see.
They run out at the same time.
Yeah, I would love to see Danny Jansen get an extension. I don't know if that is going to happen. I don't think there's going to be a ton of extensions, if any, to be honest. I think that it's almost important to have an open mind, because we still have some team control over our core, or the guys that are signed. I think, guys maybe with a year left or whatever, I think that, leave the options open. We know how this offseason went. And I think it's based off performance. And I want to see, Vladdy, ink 7 or 8 years, but what kind of Vladdy are we inking for those 7-8 years? I want to be almost more sure. Teresa, I couldn't agree more, man. The only problem, I want Danny Jansen to play 145 games every season. I really do. The fact that Kirk has this team control, I think it puts him at a higher value, sadly. And that I don't want to imagine it, but I think that there's a chance that Danny Jansen walks into free agency next year, and then gets his. And the Blue Jays will be kicking themselves, because I am a firm believer that he's going to go up and put up wicked numbers. But there's 25 other guys that we could possibly talk about, whatever. Maybe not 25, because some of them are signed to some term, have some more team control. But Vladdy is, of course, a big one. It would be nice to ink something there. I imagine Kiermaier is not going to be in that question. Relief pitchers, I don't even want to talk about relief pitchers today. There's a lot of different options. There's a lot of different options we can go. And I'll say this for my final thought. Kikuchi is an interesting one, and I think if he performs well, I think an extension later on in the season is wise. And yeah, you're probably going to overpay at that time, but it's something we should overpay for. And I'm not talking. You can't sign this guy for 5 years. This has to be a wise extension.
He'll be 33 come next season. It's tough to sign a guy into his 38.
Let's get him to, if we can get him, and if he's still kicking it and doing well through his age 36 season, that's extremely great. I don't know if that's going to happen, though. He could be a guy that's walking to the market as well.
Yeah, I don't either. I agree with you very much on Danny Jansen, because look, are we sure Alejandro Kirk can handle a full workload looking through his body and stuff like that? I'm not convinced he can, and there really isn't a good Blue Jays catching prospect coming up in the system. Unless you think Zach Britton can catch full-time, the Blue Jays catching prospects are buried down in the minor leagues. So if we do let Danny Jansen walk, we're going to have to sign another catcher. And I think I'd rather just keep Danny Jansen in fold and let him play things out here. The Athletic did a thought about what an extension would look like for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and for Bo Bichette. Because let's be real, if they're giving up their free agency years, it's going to take a lot of money and it's going to take a lot of term. They threw out 7 years, 185 million for Vlad, and then 9 years, 237 for Bo Bichette. Would you do those deals today, Riley, if they were offered to these players?
It's tough to say, man. I really want to see performance. I love Bo, and I want to see Bo. Yes, Bo. Yes, Vladdy. I really want to see what he can do on the field this year, man. And I know that they feel like they're 1A, 1B, but to me, they're really two different guys. And my value for
Right.
Bo Bichette is higher. He plays a more premium defensive position. He's done more as far as contributions towards this team in the most recent of history. Yes, I mean just last year. And I really want to see, before I really say anything, like, yeah, sign Vladdy up for that. I want to see him return more to his 2021 form. And because they're both going to get paid. They're not going to play under cheap contracts, these two. They're elite ball players, and I want to see them play like elite ball players.
And they're going to reach free agency at a young age, too. They're both going to make money, and probably a lot of it, to be honest. All right. Well, moving on to something a little fun. We got just a few more minutes left of the episode here, Riley. It was confirmed that Spencer Horwitz is living with Ernie Clement and Davis Schneider. And that led me to think, Riley, if you had to be roommates with any Toronto Blue Jay, who would your pick be?
Okay, well, I love these kind of games. I love these kind of games. If I was to be roommates with this current Blue Jays team, who would I roommate with? Now I gotta. This is a question you should have asked me before the show. I gotta think.
I can go first if you need time to think.
Well,
about it.
I'm gonna go through positions. So definitely Danny Jansen. I feel like it would be a great one. Springer would be a fun one as well. I feel like just personality wise. There's also a thing that Justin Turner and Springer and someone else are hockey guys. Get all the hockey guys together too.
Sure, yeah.
Baseball and hockey, great mix. I think that there's another world where Bo and Vlad would be great roommates. The problem, and I want to say Jose Barrios, the problem is the language barrier there.
He speaks pretty good English, actually.
That's great, and like I want to be able to, like, I wish my Spanish was better. I've always thought that. I went to Mexico. I think last May or whatever it was in 2023, I went to Mexico. Leave it at that. I can't remember exactly when it was. And I wish, because this guy looked at my Blue Jays cap, and basically the only thing I got out of it was Alejandro Kirk. And I wish I could have had a baseball discussion. This is a guy who clearly watches baseball, and I just didn't have the native tongue for it. And I would want to get a kick of myself. I got to listen to audio tapes on Spanish. But okay, I'll summarize it like this. If Barrios speaks good enough English, as I say in a very poor English speaking way, Barrios, and let's go with Danny Jansen again, and let's go with George Springer, I think would be my combination.
I specifically just went Alek Manoah because I think he would cook some really good food, and I am very passionate about the food that I eat here. Yeah,
it's because he's big. Yeah.
Well, hey, me too. I still love to eat, my guy.
You do love to eat, and you've eaten healthy. And from the first podcast we did, the viewers should know how much of a journey you've taken. And I'm sure your baseball is going to be very good this year, Jesse. For the Parkhurst Pirates, I'm sure that you're going to have a great year. I don't know how you calculate WAR in a basically 28 game season, but I'm sure
I'll figure it out.
You'd be sitting around a 4 WAR, I think.
Love that. Yeah, got to play better defense, but yeah.
But no, hitting's good. You put up pretty good doubles numbers, I think. Good bat on ball. Exit velo, always a plus with Burrow.
All right. Well, it's going to be great. Thank you for tuning in for our episode here, guys. Appreciate everyone for tuning in, and for all the viewers, and for everyone who leaving comments. X Factors is a big thing. It's going to be a big season for the Toronto Blue Jays. Next week, we're coming at you with some bold predictions, and those are always fun to do here on the show. We've got a lot of them cooking. Riley, we've been actually pretty accurate of getting some right these past few years, and I expect we'll probably do more of the same coming to this season. Remember, guys, please like the video, share with a friend, subscribe to the channel. We really want to get to 500 by opening day, and you can be a part of doing that there. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere you can find your podcast. You can find the Buds and Blue Jays show. Please make sure you do so. Riley, 45 seconds to go. Anything else you want to add before getting out of here?
Wow, I got the floor for an extended period of time. That's great, Jesse. We're gonna log off here. You got your fantasy draft tonight for
Mhm.
baseball. I think yeah, that's exciting times. Not gonna spoil it. Remember in later rounds, Tim Meza will not go drafted in most of these drafts, and I think that he will probably be a good pickup. Another Blue Jay, of course, Danny Jansen, sneaky good guy there. There's a couple inside my head of who I'm going to take in fantasy that maybe a couple other guys don't.
All right. Well, we'll keep that in mind as our draft gets going on tonight. I am planning on becoming league champion, so I will let you know how that goes throughout the course of the season. But we will see you guys next week. For Riley McConnell, I'm Jesse Burrell, and let's go Blue Jays.
Thanks, guys.